Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopichana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Stuttarajata Shishima Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 25, Text 40. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Om Namo Pitrideva Rishi Martyanam. Pitrideva Rishi Martyanam. Pitrideva Rishi Martyanam. Pitrideva Rishi Martyanam. Bhutanam Atmanaschaha. Bhutanam Atmanaschaha. Bhutanam Atmanaschaha. Bhutanam Atmanaschaha. Kshimyang vadanti sharanam. Kshimyang vadanti sharanam. Kshimyang vadanti sharanam. Kshimyang vadanti sharanam. Bhavismin yat krihashramaha. Bhavismin yat krihashramaha. Bhavismin yat krihashramaha. Bhavismin yat krihashramaha. Pitrideva Rishi Martyanam. Pitrideva Rishi Martyanam. Bhutanam Atmanaschaha. Bhutanam Atmanaschaha. Kshimyam vadanti sharanam. Kshimyam vadanti sharanam. Bhavismin yat krihashramaha. Bhavismin yat krihashramaha. Pitrideva Rishi Martyanam. Bhutanam Atmanaschaha. Kshimyam vadanti sharanam. Bhavismin yat kriyashramaha. Pitrideva Rishi Martyanam. Bhutanam Atmanaschaha. Kshimyam vadanti sharanam. Bhavismin yat kriyashramaha. Pitrideva Rishi Martyanam. Bhutanam Atmanaschaha. Kshimyam vadanti sharanam. Bhavismin yat kriyashramaha.
Pitrideva Rishi Martyanam.
Pitrideva Rishi Martyanam.
Bhutanam Atmanaschaha.
Bhutanam atmanascha
Kshimyam vadanti sharanam
Kshimyam vadanti sharanam
Bhavismin yad grihashramaha
Bhavismin yad grihashramaha Pitri devarshimartyanam Bhutanam atmanascha Kshimyam vadanti sharanam Bhavismin yad grihashramaha Pitri, forefathers, Deva, demigods, Rishi, sages, Martyanam, of humanity in general, Bhutana, of the infinite living entities, Atmanaha, of oneself, Cha, also, Ha, certainly, Kshimyam, beneficial, Vadanti, they say, Sharanam, shelter, Bhave, in the material world, Asmin, this, Yat, that which, Griha ashramaha, householder life. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. The woman continued, according to authorities, the householder life is pleasing not only to oneself, but to all the forefathers, demigods, great sages, saintly persons, and everyone else. A householder life is thus beneficial. According to the Vedic system, when one is born in this material world, he has many obligations. He has obligations to the demigods of the sun and moon, King Indra, Varuna, etc., because they are supplying the necessities of life. We receive heat, light, water, and all other natural amenities through the mercy of the demigods. We are also indebted to our forefathers who have given us these bodies, paternal property, intelligence, society, friendship, and love. Similarly, we are indebted to the general public for politics and sociology, and we are also indebted to lower animals such as horses, cows, asses, dogs, and cats. In this way, as soon as one is born in this material world as a human being, he has so many obligations and is bound to repay all these obligations. If he does not repay them, he is further entangled in the process of birth and death. The Grihamedi, however, who is overly addicted to material things, does not know that if he simply takes shelter at the lotus feet of Mukunda, he is immediately freed from all obligations to others. Unfortunately, a Grihamedi does not have any interest in Krishna consciousness. Prahlad Maharaj says, Matirna Krishne paratasvatova mito vidpadyeta griha brutanam. A Griha Brata is the same as a Grihamedi. One who takes sex life to be supreme finds action in Krishna consciousness confusing, either due to his own personal consideration or due to his having taken instructions from others or conferring with them. He becomes addicted to sexual indulgence and cannot act in Krishna consciousness. Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam tadati swapadantikam Vandehang Shri Guru Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatang Vitang Tvang Sajivam Sadvaitang Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitangscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. The woman continued, according to authorities, the household life is pleasing not only to oneself, but to all the forefathers, demigods, great sages, saintly persons, and everyone else. A household life is thus beneficial. Hare Krishna. So, maybe you can start off very basic understanding how it is described in the Vedic scriptures that God is one, and at the same time He has many parts, small parts, and energies, different energies, and one of those is the marginal energy, the living entities who belong to Krishna, who are part of Krishna. And the actual function is described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Jivar Swarupoi, Krishna Nityadas, that the actual identity, the inherent nature of the living entity is to serve Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Serve Him for His pleasure. As a part of a body serves the whole, so the living entity is supposed to serve Krishna. Krishna, however, He gives the living entity the free will. If they want to serve Him, or they want to act independently. That is, as we logically can understand, the prerogative for a loving exchange, free will. And so some of these living entities, they decide that they want to be independent. They are envious of Krishna and they want to imitate Him, and so they turn away from Him, desiring to enjoy separately, independently. And Krishna, being very merciful, He actually arranges for this living entity to get all the facilities for enjoyment. And that is a very important point to understand, that nobody else than Krishna can arrange for our enjoyment. Because Krishna is everything, So if the living entity in illusion turns away, then what can they turn to except Krishna? There is nothing else. So Krishna, being so merciful, he creates a whole arrangement so that the living entities can make this experience thinking they are independent of Krishna, even though they are never independent. They are always dependent on him. If they want to enjoy independently, also they depend on Krishna. He makes all the arrangements. But the living entity is born in this material world, in this illusion, unconscious about the underlying truth behind the manifested world, and not actually being aware that this is all the energy belonging to God. And so the living entity in this illusion thinks, I'm the enjoyer, I'm the proprietor. Ishvaroham aham bhogi, I'm the Lord, I'm the enjoyer. And all the living entities in this material world, they have this mentality. From the lowest to the highest form of life. In some smaller or bigger degree, that mentality of being envious and wanting to enjoy separately from Krishna is there. And the living entity belongs to the spiritual world where Krishna lives and where he is the center, where he performs his pastimes, where he enjoys with his parts and parcels. And so, in order to imitate Krishna, in order to be the master oneself, Krishna, he has to actually replicate the whole arrangement of the spiritual world in a way so that we can make this experience with all the facilities Krishna has in the spiritual world. We can make it here so that our desire gets so-called satisfied. It's never being satisfied because Krishna explains it's a reflection. This material world, there is only reality, there is only the spiritual world, but Krishna, he, through his potencies, he arranges that the whole reality is being reflected. As a tree standing on the water, the tree standing at the side of a pool of water is being reflected. And the tree is the substance, and the reflection is a reflection of the substance. There is no substance in it. There is no enjoyment in the material world. It's simply an illusion. And in the spiritual world, it's full of variegatedness. So many living entities, so many activities, so many different circumstances. We have a lot of experience in this world, and this is only a reflection. So we can imagine how variegated the spiritual world must be. And the center of all enjoyment in the spiritual world is Krishna. Krishna having his relationship with his devotees. And the center of all relationships is Srimati Radharani. She's the... So, what's the enjoyment in the spiritual world? It's described Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it's rasa. And there are so many rasas, and the origin of all rasas is Adiras, which is between Krishna and Radharani. So that's the seed. The seed of all enjoyment in the spiritual world is this relationship between Krishna and Radharani, and everything evolves around it. It's not something else in the center. No, it's that in the seminar room we have this chart of the, according to Brahma Samhita and the different scriptures, depicting the spiritual world with Goloka. So what is in the center of Goloka Vrindavan? Radha Krishna on a lotus petal. And from there, like a flower, a lotus flower, it has a center, and then it expands from there. The whole beautiful manifestation has a center, a root cause. So, and that is also reflected into the material world. So also in the material world, the center of so-called enjoyment is sex life. There is this term, Maithuna Agara, the prison house of sex life. So, as in the spiritual world, the adiras, the relationship between Radha, everything is circles around that. In the material world, everything circles around sex life. Prabhupada, when he once was standing in New York and he was overlooking the skyscrapers in Manhattan, he pointed out that the cause of all this is sex life. Attraction between man and woman, male and female. And so then the Vedic scriptures given by Krishna, they explain how the living entity can live happily. They describe the goal of life, namely to go back to the spiritual world where life is eternal. But they also describe how to live happily in this world. And Krishna explains also in the Bhagavad Gita what Prabhupada is also explaining in this purport, that we come the point we were making before, that we want to enjoy independently, and so we take birth in this world, and we are a spirit soul, a small spark, and now we want to enjoy separately from Krishna. So Krishna has to supply everything, even the instrument of enjoyment. It's crazy if you think about it. He has to even enjoy the instrument, how we can enjoy, because as a soul we cannot enjoy. He gives us the mind, the false ego, the intelligence, the senses working and knowledge acquiring, the whole body, so that we can actually just reach out to some enjoyment separately from Krishna. And then what does the body do? It interacts with the senses, with the sense objects. And what are the sense objects? The sense objects are, it's the energy of Krishna. It's also the energy of Krishna. So we take the energy of Krishna and we we identify with that energy, and that energy interacts with the total energy, and then the impression is created that I'm the enjoyer. And how do we enjoy these objects of the senses? Primarily we enjoy them through other living entities. Like we said before, sex life is the center of material existence, Maithuna Agari, and So if I want to enjoy sex, I need another living entity. And what is the living entity? Aparemitastvanyam. It's another energy of Krishna. It's again Krishna. But due to Maya, the illusory potency, the jiva thinks to be independent, forgets Krishna, and develops this mentality of I'm the enjoyer, I'm the controller. And therefore Krishna gives the Vedic knowledge. And Prabhupada says here the Vedic system. The Vedic system is based on the Vedic knowledge. And the Vedic knowledge uplifts the living entity from animal life to human life by giving dharma. And the basic understanding is that everything is given to us, like Prabhupada says here. We take birth, the body is given to us. It's given to us by our mother and our father. Then we get, Prabhupada says, the sun god, the moon god. The sun god is giving us light and heat and making life possible. The moon gives us the ras, the taste in this material world of all the eatables. The moon is supplying the taste. Without the moon, everything would be tasteless. And the moon is also giving the ras in the mind, the relationships, so that I can think you are my friend or you're my child or whatever. This is coming also from the moon. So we are fully dependent on the moon. King Indra is giving rain so that vegetation can grow, etc., etc. And Prabhupada also says, we are indebted to our forefathers, like our parents, paternal property. Intelligence is given. It's not our own property. It is given to us. Society, friendship and love. When I was reading that, I was thinking, Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Shishi Gornitai Kicha. I was thinking how when I look back in my life, the upbringing here that I experience is so ungrateful. Like children, they will completely mistreat their parents. Parents will mistreat their children. There is then the parents who have parents themselves, the grandparents, they also got so much from them, but when they are old, they don't want to take care of them. Then there are so many facilities in this world, but how much grateful are we? And even as devotees, it's very easy to complain. I remember when Corona pandemic broke out, and a lot of devotees were, very heavy about. They know the cause of that and this demonic society, etc., etc. And I remember how His Holiness Bhakti Charmaj, even in a lecture or maybe in a meeting, he mentioned we were also enjoying, like everyone else. We were also not. The devotees were not really living of course, they're not eating meat and all that, but apart from that, we are enjoying everything. And so he was making the point, now when we suffer, we also have to accept that part. And yeah, it's very easy to complain as devotee. It's easy to complain about my family, my parents, and then on the plea of now I'm a devotee of Krishna, I don't have any obligations, I can coldly reject them. But actually what is said here, it's about the pure devotee. The pure devotee doesn't have any obligations anymore. And even the pure devotee, Krishna gives the example, I don't have any, he says in the Bhagavad Gita, I don't have any duty, but still I'm acting. Because I want to show others the example, and I also don't want to imbalance the system. And Prabhupada also says here, that's why I had to laugh while I read the purport, horses, cows, asses, dogs and cats, we are indebted to them. And I was reading it yesterday, the purport, and it kind of struck me like cats and dogs. How am I indebted? And now when I was reading, the memory from my childhood came up, because we grew up with, on a farm, we grew up with cats and dogs. And I remember as children, all of us, we had basically a cat. And the cat we would hug the cat, we would even take it to the bed. It's really mochi. But the cat gave us affection and love, and somehow we are indebted. So it is very, very complex, and it's Om Purnamada Purnamidam. It's a complete arrangement, and every part is like a screw in the machine and supports, and existence for every individual is only possible by so many different arrangements and different living entities actually supplying different things. And so the Vedic scriptures, they give this understanding that you are actually not a product of this material nature, but you are spiritual, and God is present, He has created the whole manifestation. So here's the way how you can live happily. And Krishna also in the Bhagavad Gita explains that whatever you get, you offer it back to the demigods, and then the demigods, being pleased by that offering, give it back again. And he said by this process, parasparam, you can live happily and prosperous. So that is how the Vedic knowledge elevates the living entity from an animal to a human. And by giving them dharma, there is dharma for every field of life, how to behave in family, how to behave in profession, how to behave with the nature, and all these kind of things. It becomes very complex also, as we can read in Mahabharata, that the whole Mahabharata is talking so much about dharma and trying to establish dharma. And I was reading the other day how I'm just now reading just before the war in Kurukshetra, and so when the Pandavas were in exile, in the last year they went to a place called Virat. And you might remember, they were living under the skies for 1 year, and every one of them had a different role. And then after that year, the Kauravas, they kind of got a hint that the Pandavas are there, so they attacked. But the time was already over, so Arjuna, he defeated the whole Kaurava army himself. So they went back. And then they decided that now there is only one way. Either they give us some part of the kingdom, or we have to fight. And then Dhritarashtra sends Sanjay, who is also speaking the Bhagavad Gita, to Virat with a message. And the message goes something like this. Sanjay arrives, and actually the preparations for the war have already begun. So the Pandavas, they are acquiring their alliances, and also the Kauravas. And so many of the kings are at the same place. And Sanjay arrives, and there is a big court they welcome him, and then he speaks. And what he speaks the message of Dhritarashtra, and he says, Yudhishthira, you are so noble-minded. Why are you greedy for kingdom now? And why do you want to fight? This war will only bring pain to all involved. So better you should follow the virtuous path and renounce the kingdom. Things like that, he says. And so then Yudhishthira, he replies, tell him that I'm a Kshatriya and I need the kingdom. And if I don't have a kingdom, there will be war. He was, even me, after the whole exile, and Yudhishthira was always so humble, but all of a sudden Yudhishthira is very clear. And then Sanjay says, I don't understand. Everybody's glorifying you as the most virtuous personality on this planet, and now you are so determined to have war. Where is your mercy? And he brings all these arguments. And then Yudhishthira replies that it is very difficult. And he says, why are you acting adharmically? To Yudhishthira. And Yudhishthira then replies, it is very difficult to understand what dharma is and how it is applied. And sometimes what seems to be dharma is actually adharma, and what seems to be adharma is actually dharma. And therefore Krishna makes it very easy for us. He says, Sarva dharmam parityaja mamekam sharanam braja hang tvang sarva papibhyo mokshayishyami ma shuchaha. One verse which is very simple and straightforward, but so difficult to understand at the same time, which we can again see in the example of Arjuna. Arjuna, he wanted to sarva dharmam parityaja. He wanted to renounce his so-called dharmas and follow a higher dharma, but then Krishna said, no, this is your dharma. But then he says, sarva dharma. That it's kind of, how you say? It's a paradox in a way. And therefore there is a verse, I forgot where the verse is, in which scripture, and I also don't remember exactly the Sanskrit, but the meaning is something like, dharma is hidden in the hearts of the self-realized souls. And I just want to wind this up, because Prabhupada, he refers to a verse in Bhagavatam, famous verse. Krishna Prema Prabhu, I think you learned that some weeks ago. Atirna Krishna Parata Satovam Mito Bibatyeta Grihavratanam Adanta Gobhir Vishatam Tamisram Puna Punascharvita Charvananam. Because of their uncontrolled senses, persons too addicted to materialistic life make progress toward hellish conditions and repeatedly chew that which has already been chewed. Their inclinations toward Krishna are never aroused, either by the instructions of others, by their own efforts, or by a combination of both. So, here is a part in the purport which I would like to read just briefly. And why? Because we spoke about the spiritual world and how the material world is arranged, and it's a reflection. And sex life, the adiras, the sex life, the perverted adiras, sex life is what binds us in this material world. And so in order to exist in this world, Krishna gives the Vedic knowledge, which gives us the understanding that we are actually so much dependent on other things. But then there is different stages and different kinds of dharmas, and by studying Bhagavad Gita we can understand that the best course of action, the highest dharma, is to be Krishna conscious and to follow the instructions of Krishna and to please him. And then this verse that the dharma is actually only hidden in the heart of a self-realized soul. And Prabhupada here quotes in this purport, as confirmed by Rishabdev, Mahat sevang dvaram mahur vimuktehe. One must try to understand Krishna by serving a devotee. The word Mahat refers to a devotee. Mahatmanastu mang parata daivim prakriting ashritaha bhajantyananyam manaso jnatva bhutading avyayam. O son of Pritha, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. And Prabhupada then explains, a Mahatma is one who is constantly engaged in devotional service, 24 hours a day. As explained in the following verses, unless one adheres to such a great personality, one cannot understand Krishna. Hiranyakashipu wanted to know where Prahlad has gotten this Krishna consciousness. Who had taught him? Prahlad sarcastically replied, my dear father, persons like you never understand Krishna. One can understand Krishna only by serving a Mahat, a great soul. Those who try to adjust material conditions are said to be chewing the chewed. No one has been able to adjust material conditions, but life after life, generation after generation, people try and repeatedly fail. Unless one is properly trained by a Mahatma, or unalloyed devotee of the Lord, there is no possibility of one's understanding Krishna and his devotional service. Just to make that point again, we can hear from Prabhupada how, yeah, the Vedas, they give so much knowledge, but then ultimately they bring us to the point of understanding that actually we don't belong to this world. We don't belong to the material world, we belong to the spiritual world. And to go there, we have to be Krishna conscious. But to be Krishna conscious, we have to receive the mercy of a pure devotee, because he actually has the realization in his heart. And otherwise, it is very difficult to ascertain, like Yudhishthira Maharaj said, it is very difficult to understand what is right and wrong, only by the guidance of a pure devotee. We are not capable of understanding ourselves. Even though we have the scriptures, we need the living Bhagavat to really guide us. And then one can overcome the shackle of the material world, sex life, which was explained here, which is very difficult to overcome. Daivesha gunamai mama maya durateya mameva mamevate pavatate mayam etang tarantite. So we are in this illusory energy, we are captured, we are in prison, and sex life is the shackle that binds us down. And Krishna consciousness is the only way, and it's only given by the pure devotee, by no one else. Hare Krishna. Thank you for your attention. And we can end here, it's already 8:30. Krantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Gaur. Hast du gelesen, er sagt absichtlich macht, aber schon. Well, absichtlich habe ich mich nicht. Nein, ich habe eigentlich für die Single gemacht.
Ich habe da wohl nicht gelesen, was ich schon
Der Vers gesehen. Du bist eine Sache.
Der nächste ist aber nicht besser. Also ich denke, das ist
So we do the treatment today. We will be outside when it is sun. We will start at 10, but the small ones I can take out maybe around 11, 11:30.